Welcome back. This is K24 This Morning. We're still looking at the big stories of the day and giving Parliament its scorecard so far. How do you think this August House has fared in terms of delivering the goods, carrying out its roles and functions? We have our question of the day. Let's have that up. What has been this Parliament's biggest achievement? Once again, what has been this Parliament's biggest achievement? The WhatsApp number is right there at the bottom of the screen. You can also get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. Let's have them up. Our current Parliament has really been a disgrace to our nation. Their behavior has really painted it in a bad light, having allowed themselves to be corrupted at the corridors of toilets, prioritizing salary increment at the expense of Kenyans' economic turmoils, and giving political sycophantism as their father and mother is a great shame. Even if there were 99% good from Parliament and 0.001% of corruption, this 0.001% will have painted Parliament in such a bad light. This will characterize them as a corrupt house of laws in our history. That's Jenga Wakongo from Kihara. There is the need for unity and understanding among our leaders. This will effectively bring political stability and in turn improve our dying economy. We have one more message. Let's have that up as well. In Kenya, while the constitution is clear on the role of Parliament, they are busy doing what their party bosses want, hence not independent. It's dead and buried. That's what we have so far as that's concerned. Keep them coming in. Once again, the WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. You can also get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. And even as we talk about this particular Parliament and its role, also the question that's just looming over all our heads is, how long does it go? Is it dissolved or not? Now, Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu has appointed a bench of 5 judges to hear petitions challenging Moraga's advisory to President Uhuru Kenyatta to dissolve Parliament for failing to enact the 2/3 gender rule. There are up to 5 constitutional petitions filed by different applicants, which will be heard by 5 judges. Giverson Minor had this to report.
Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu on Wednesday announced a bench of 5 judges that will hear and determine 5 judicial review applications challenging Chief Justice David Moraga's advisory to President Uhuru Kenyatta to dissolve Parliament for its failure to enact the 2/3 gender rule. The bench of 5 judges include Justice Pauline Nyamweya, Justice Jojo Dunga, Justice Lydia Chode, Justice James Makau, and Justice Anthony Ndungu. According to the judiciary, the Chief Justice could not appoint the bench since he is a respondent in the petitions. The 5 applicants challenging Moraga's advisory include Attorney General, the Senate, Parliamentary Service Commission, Mathare Member of Parliament Antonio Luoch, Lena Conchela, and lawyer Adrian Kamodho. In his advisory to the President to dissolve the Parliament, Moraga relied on Article 261, Section 7 of the Constitution, and I quote, "If Parliament fails to enact legislation in accordance with an order under Clause 6B, the Chief Justice shall advise the President to dissolve Parliament, and the President shall dissolve Parliament." On his side, Migori Senator Ochilo Ayako argues that the current Parliament's term has not ended, and therefore the Parliament cannot be said to have failed to enact the 2/3 gender rule.
In my liberal interpretation of the Constitution, and I'm entitled to interpret it the way I think it is, every Parliament that comes to formation, that is elected and sworn in, has a period of 5 years within which to comply or fail to comply. So first, it is wrong to say that this Parliament has refused or has failed to enact the legislation necessary for implementing the 1/3 gender rule, because the life of this Parliament is not just about to expire.
This comes even as the Law Society of Kenya, LSK, and other lobby groups stormed the Parliament on Monday in support of the CJ advice to the President to dissolve Parliament. Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka also on Tuesday noted that the Constitution did not anticipate such a scenario that could bring about a national crisis. Giverson Minor, K24, Nairobi.
And here we stand as far as that's concerned in the corridors of justice now, in its advisory and whether to accept it or not. Let me start with you, Millie, on this one, because some people have said they had ample time to deal with this particular issue, still burying their heads in the sand. So even as it gets here, none of them should take this advisory to the corridors of justice. They had the time, they had the knowledge, they should have done something if they wanted to.
I think that I like it when people take matters to the court, because then we get an interpretation. and we are able to move forward as a nation. Now, remember that for years, 30 years, women had fought for equality. Men had supported the call for equality of both genders, and Kenyans generally spoke. And we had a constitution that stated that we need to have gender equality, and at worst, not more than 2/3. Now, when that question was first taken to the Supreme Court, the then Chief Justice Willie Mutunga was the only one who gave a dissenting opinion. He was not even able then, as chair of the Supreme Court, to convince his fellow colleagues to give an advisory that would guide this country to one direction. But the Supreme Court then said that this should progressively done. That was the first advisory from the Supreme Court. And we cannot forget that, after years of fighting for that equality. Now, Parliament has also, after years of trying to deal with it, passed certain laws. And I think that we cannot pretend that we are not aware that there are some laws that they have passed that intend to address the issue of promoting gender equality. Different laws that will promote this aspect. Now, the part that has been missing and that we have been calling for is the law that is going to ensure that the representation in that house is equal, is at worst not more than 2/3 of either gender being represented in that house. Now, their failure to do this has not been total. There have been bills, they have been passed, there have been meetings, there have been consultations, and there have been various reasons as to why this has failed. Sometimes there's been inadequacy in reaching the number. Sometimes, I think most of the time, that has been the issue, that they've not managed to reach the threshold. And that has been taken into account by the number of members of Parliament that were present in the House. And this has been both at the Senate level and the National Assembly level. So I think that when you look at the effort that has been made by this nation, it is justified for one to feel frustrated and feel that at this point, somebody needs to just bite the bullet and be able to take this agenda forward. And that is why then you find that the Chief Justice may have been convinced that the best advice he would give then, in light of those circumstances, would be that. We know that the matter is now pending for the bench, the very able bench that is going to listen to it. And we know that there are matters that they will have to consider, because even with that frustration and with that history in play, is the Chief Justice's role under the Constitution then merely that of to convey the frustration of the country, or does he have to take other factors into account beyond and outside the failure of Parliament to having passed that legislation? Now, that alone, I think, would be unfair or unfortunate to focus a scorecard of Parliament's performance on that alone. There are many laws that Parliament has frustrated this country in passing. There are bills that have been passed by the National Assembly, have been pending at the Senate level for a year or more, and it's frustrating for the general that are waiting for amendment of these laws. That is slow. A slow progression towards that end that we hope could progress faster. But it does not mean that they are not doing it. So that's why it is impossible to give them a scorecard of very low. I will give them average, as I said. And I think that with the advisory, we will hear what the judges think when the bench sits as to whether they think the CJ should just merely have taken that into account or taken other factors as well into account in giving that advice.
Okay. Dr. Halwale, on this one, when you look at it, because by the time the CJ was giving his advisory, surely people would have assumed that he would have consulted the bench, the very bench that is going to be hearing these cases. So when it stands at this particular point in time, are we looking at a question of when, not if, Parliament is being dissolved once it goes this direction?
This is a very easy one. In fact, it is one of the easiest things to ever go before a bench. I can very well predict correctly that this is going to be a very short ruling, and the bench will say that under the Constitution, the same Constitution, what is being done is tantamount to putting the Constitution on trial. Is tantamount to challenging the legality of the Constitution of Kenya. Fortunately, the drafters of the Constitution anticipated this, and they created an article, Article 2, specifically to speak to the supremacy of this Constitution, which says that any provision of this Constitution cannot be challenged before any court of law, cannot be challenged by any court of law, by any person or state organ. So, hii maneno imekwisha. Members of parliament, they better start backing their backs to go and ask wananchi to re-elect them. You are not going to wish away the Constitution of Kenya. The moment a ruling is made outside what I have quoted from the Constitution, it means that now we will be setting a precedent whereby you can take the Constitution of Kenya to court.
Right.
Finally, may I speak to what my sister Millie, allow me to call you my sister. I don't know what you would prefer. What my sister has spoken to, the issue of consultations. Sometimes, Gabriel, I fear listening to lawyers, because lawyers sometimes just tell you that which pleases whoever paid them to go to court. Moraga, for God's sake, did not, on his volition, make this decision. He was moved by the failure of Parliament to do this legislation, and he was moved by the decision of the High Court, which said that he should dissolve Parliament. So he went ahead. But before he did that, Gabriel, he invited both speakers. So if Millie thinks that the speakers of the houses, or the senator of Migori who has spoken on TV, if he believes that they still have the 5 years, when their speakers were invited by the Chief Justice, then they would have presented those positions that they still have 2 years, they think they can do it. So their defense does not hold any water.
Okay.
They should just swallow the bitter pill and go home. Finally, this again brings us back to the functioning of our institutions. Earlier on, we had spoken to the scorecard of Parliament. In my view, whereas we are claiming members of Parliament, we must accept that Parliament can only be as strong as the Speaker of that Parliament and as strong as the clerk of that Parliament. I'll give you 2 examples. The then clerk of the National Assembly, may his soul rest in eternal peace, was approached by, again, the then chairman of Public Accounts Committee, who had a damaging report on how money had been stolen from the Ministry of Water. And when the chairman had attempted to influence the clerk invited the Auditor General to bypass the chairman of the Public Accounts. That was a strong clerk. Speaker Marty would never, upon sharing a national function with the president, would never retreat to the garden party with the president, because he believed, Speaker Marty, that he was now creating a fertile ground for him to be influenced by the thinking of the president. Today, you hear Speaker Lusaka, Speaker Muturi say that they are waiting for the president to give his opinion on a matter before the House before they proceed. They even write to the president. That is crazy. It is completely in breach of the doctrine of the separation of powers between the 3 arms of government. So our failure of Parliament, blame it to the Speaker, blame it to the clerk.
Okay. Gabi, I want us to wind up this dissolution talk very quickly. We have 7 minutes to go as we get to our final phase. As it stands right now it's out of our hands. It's the 5-bench judge bench that decides this. What is your feeling on this one? Because it seems like, as they say, most people are saying the law is very clear.
Correct.
They should have done this. They have not done it. Go home.
You know, and I'll be so glued. And if I get a chance, I'll actually visit the chambers just to hear, that debate. I hope they can open it up. But I really hope that they'll cover the proceedings on TV so that me and you are able to watch. What comes to play is what I agree with all my friends here. It's actually time bad. And this has actually taken more time than I thought it would. But to me, this is where the red herring is, Jeff. Dr. when he was a member of parliament, he'll tell you that there's something that they call the Oath of Affirmation, right?
Yes.
The Oath of Affirmation, if you hear it, where they put their hand in the Bible and they lift the other hand, they actually talk about defending the Constitution. So that Constitution talks about engraving the two-third gender bill, right? And this was laid there by the architects of our Constitution with the full realization that this is something that this country needed. And it's part and parcel of our Constitution. So when you are taking the Oath of Affirmation, it means that you are going to defend that which is therein in that Constitution. So the question is, have they failed? All right? So I don't think it creates any lacuna, as many people would probably believe, or it's something quite complicated. It is just a piece, a very important piece, if I may add that, so that Millie can hear me correctly, because I know she supports this hands down. A very important piece of our Constitution that has been deliberately left out, if I may use that word. Okay. So how do you reconcile the two? That at one hand, your Oath of Affirmation was to defend that Constitution, which you have not passed in somewhat deliberate. You've heard all the time. So what do you explain? So I think that's where we'll see a lot of confusion. Okay. But to me, that's how this matters as far as governance is concerned. That is how it can be interpreted. Let us see what the 5 bench judges will come up with. But at this point, I think it is actually a very dicey situation, because the very Constitution you actually swore to protect, you've not been able to do it.
We'll wait and see, like you said, what transpires with that 5-judge bench. I want us to move it quickly as we have 4 minutes to go before we wind up and look at this parliament through the lens of Chapter 6 of the Constitution, because just like Caesar's wife, you're not only supposed to be seen without blame, you should have no blame as well. And as far as it's concerned, Millie, from where you stand, because we've spoken about this chapter so many times, when you look at the August House, what's your assessment of, from their utterances in public to how they carry themselves? Are they holding this true, or is this another point, as Gabi says, where they took the Oath of Affirmation but are not protecting that very Constitution that they swore to protect?
It is unfortunate that we are talking about this a day after they sang to the heart of Kenyans, danced to the heart of Kenyans, a song that everybody in the world is rallying around right now. But I think that, remember, the worst case I think that Kenyans cannot forget about was the allegations of people being given monies in the toilet to discuss an issue that was affecting the whole country. It was terrible. Remember again with the, I think it was Sugar in Senate, again same allegations of monies being poured to ensure that the report will be developed in a certain manner. Again, most unfortunate. I think that when it comes to issues of integrity, the parliament currently has performed really much below expectations, because Kenyans would have liked to see a lot more of them standing up for issues and debating passionately the way parliamentarians of yore used to do, to support issues that they think are of importance to the public at large. But unfortunately, we will see them speaking very passionately. Of course, we know on certain issues when it comes to issues of concern to them. And of course, also on other issues, we saw them speak very passionately when people were being thrown out of houses at the peak of COVID. And that was moving for many Kenyans to know that somebody out there who will speak of the outrage we are all feeling. But when it comes to integrity, particularly when it comes to issues of money, I think it's really, really wanting.
Okay. Okay, let me bring it back to studio. Dr. Halali, from where you stand as well, because we've seen, as Millie has spoken about what happened in the loos in Parliament, but also in terms of the utterances that they make in public functions, which has also been brought back with the whole National Security Advisory Committee and the measures being put in place. Is it that Chapter 6 isn't prescriptive enough as to how you can be have integrity while holding public office? Is that the problem?
I think what I have painfully learned to accept is that the Constitution is what who is reading it makes it of it. Otherwise, if the Constitution was what is there in letter and spirit, we would remember that the same Constitution is the one that removed the Deputy Chief Justice, Nancy Barasa, purely because she poked Kerubo's nose. That the same Constitution is still in force. And two things have happened and I have seen like this. Then I wonder, what am I reading or what am I supposed to believe? Namely, the same Constitution, Gabriel. GBM Karaoke, Justice. He knifed a Matatu boy. And he was set free, he's still in office. And thanks to the acrobatics of law, he ended up being paid $5 million in compensation for having his good name being spoiled. Wow. The same Constitution, why it's still in office, why it's still in force, we saw a member of parliament draw a gun and fire a DJ. The DJ I hear is paralyzed. Wow. Yeah? The same member of parliament is walking scot-free. So the issue of Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya will depend forever on leadership.
Okay.
If the leadership collectively decides that Chapter 6 must apply, then we will see great results like what we saw under the removal of the Deputy Chief Justice, Nancy Barasa.
Gabi, we have 30 seconds before we close the show. What's your take on Parliament?
Actually,
and
Chapter 6, this is a very critical chapter that you should be talking about because majority of that speaks to me and you, the voter. So we need to be very careful who we bring to Parliament. Half of the time that we are talking about changing how this country is viewed and in other jurisdictions, and this we have to be very clear about, is how we go and vote. That particular substance of our vote must mean something to Chapter 6. It is in our domain to ensure that we sieve our leaders, to ensure that we do not end up with such characters who can actually swing open and remove a gun and shoot somebody, and they are still the people representing us. So we have a part to play as citizens of this country. So if we are going to talk about, ensuring that Chapter 6 is well received, then it also must start at the voter side of things. Okay, that's where we leave it as far as this conversation is concerned. Of course, as always, it continues online. You can get me at I am Jeff Mote or at K24 TV. Many thanks for my panel to making time this morning. Gabriel Muthuma, thank you so much. Welcome back once again. Dr. Boni Aloy, thank you so much for making time as well. Asante sana. And joining the conversation via Skype, Millie Lwanga, thank you so much for making time as well.
Thank you. And we, of course, cannot forget that Millie Mabona has brought the gender angle to Parliament throughout very, very, very loudly and clearly, bringing the women's concern to every issue. Okay. So that's another chance. Yes. Okay, that's where we leave it as far as that's concerned. Don't forget, you can get yourself a copy of your People Daily. It's only 10 shillings, a number that you dial, *550*4#. Once again, the number is *550*4#. Dial it, get yourself a copy of your People Daily straight to your phone. You take a short break now. We are back in a bit as we get interactive. Good morning.